What if I told you that one of Europe's most extraordinary places isn't connected to the mainland at all? Far out in the North Atlantic, where violent waves crash against towering cliffs and the wind never seems to rest, 18 ancient volcanic islands rise from the sea like the spine of a sleeping giant. Welcome to the Faroe Islands. This tiny archipelago is one of the most remote inhabited places in Europe. At first glance, it looks almost impossible to call home. Winter brings barely 4 hours of daylight. Powerful Atlantic storms regularly sweep across the islands with hurricane-force winds, and the nearest major city lies hundreds of miles away across open ocean. Most people would visit for a few days. Very few would choose to build an entire life here. Yet more than 53,000 people proudly call these islands home. That raises an interesting question. What makes someone stay in a place where nature constantly tests your limits? What kind of life can exist on isolated islands where the weather changes in minutes and the outside world often feels impossibly far away? The answer isn't what you'd expect. Because the Faroe Islands aren't simply surviving against the odds. They're quietly thriving. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore how this rugged collection of islands transformed isolation into strength, turned harsh weather into a way of life, and built one of the strongest communities you'll find anywhere on Earth. And by the end of this journey, you might find yourself asking a question you never expected. Could you leave everything behind and call this remarkable place home? To understand the Faroe Islands, you first have to understand the landscape. Sitting almost exactly halfway between mainland Europe and the Arctic Circle, this tiny nation is made up of 18 volcanic islands, with only 17 permanently inhabited. Together, they cover less land than the city of London, yet the scenery feels bigger than life itself. Towering basalt cliffs explode straight out of the Atlantic. Deep valleys carve through the mountains, while waterfalls plunge hundreds of feet directly into the ocean. Every turn feels like stepping into a fantasy movie, except this place is completely real. But living here isn't about chasing postcard views. Nature is in charge. The weather has a personality of its own. Locals often joke, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. And honestly, they're not kidding. Sunshine can instantly give way to thick fog, heavy rain, or powerful wind before you even finish your morning coffee. Rain falls nearly 280 days every year, while steady winds regularly sweep across the islands at more than 25 miles per hour. During winter, daylight becomes a rare luxury. The sun doesn't rise until around 9:30 in the morning and disappears again by mid-afternoon, leaving long, dark evenings behind. Most people would see these conditions as deal-breakers. The Faroese see them as normal life. Geography has shaped everything here, from the homes people build to the way neighbors depend on one another. Isolation didn't make this society weaker. It made it stronger. When storms shut down ferries, cancel flights, or cut villages off from the outside world, people don't panic. They check on their neighbors. They share supplies. They come together. Because out here, survival has never been about standing alone. It's always been about standing together. Living on islands this remote meant one thing from the very beginning. The Faroese couldn't rely on the outside world. So they learned to rely on the land itself. Scattered across the hillsides are homes unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. At first glance, their roofs look like rolling patches of green countryside. But look closer, and you'll realize those aren't gardens. They're alive. For more than 1,000 years, Faroese families have covered their homes with thick layers of turf and grass. It wasn't designed to impress visitors, it was built to survive one of Europe's harshest climates. In a place where trees are incredibly rare and timber had to be brought across the sea, the first Viking settlers found an ingenious solution. Instead of fighting nature, they worked with it. The living grass forms a natural waterproof barrier, while the thick soil traps heat inside during the freezing winters and keeps homes cool throughout the summer. Even today, many of these traditional houses continue to perform better than modern materials in the island's unpredictable weather. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the smartest technology isn't the newest. It's the one that has already survived 1,000 years. That same spirit of resilience becomes even more remarkable on Mykonos, the westernmost inhabited island in the Faroes. Only about 16 permanent residents call this tiny village home. Reaching it isn't easy. Depending on the season, the only way in is by helicopter or boat, both completely at the mercy of the Atlantic Ocean. When violent storms arrive, transportation can stop for weeks, leaving the island almost entirely cut off from the rest of the world. Yet no one is truly alone. Neighbors share food, check on one another, and keep old traditions alive around the warmth of home. Here, community isn't just a nice idea. It's the reason life continues. And while only a handful of people live on Mykonos, they share the island with nearly 60,000 puffins. These colorful seabirds nest along the dramatic cliffs every year, turning the island into one of the greatest puffin colonies anywhere in the North Atlantic, proof that, out here, nature has always been the true owner of the land. The Faroe Islands may be small, but their identity is anything but. Hidden among these windswept cliffs is one of the rarest living languages on Earth. Faroese traces its roots directly back to Old Norse, the language once spoken by the Vikings over 1,000 years ago. Today, fewer than 80,000 people worldwide speak it, making it one of Europe's smallest language communities. In many places, a language this small would slowly disappear. Here, it refuses to. Every child grows up speaking Faroese at home and in school. It's the language of family dinners, text messages, business meetings, and even software development. Instead of becoming a relic of the past, it has adapted to the modern world without losing its soul. That same commitment to tradition can be seen in one remarkable custom that has survived for over 8 centuries, the Faroese chain dance. Unlike most folk dances, there are no musical instruments. People simply join hands, form a circle, and sing medieval ballads that have been passed down through generations. The stories, the rhythm, and even many of the lyrics remain almost unchanged after hundreds of years. Imagine teenagers today singing the same verses their ancestors performed nearly 800 years ago. That's not history preserved in a museum. That's history still alive. But here's where the Faroe Islands become truly surprising. Despite their remote location, they're also one of the most digitally connected places in Europe. Nearly every community has access to high-speed fiber optic internet, allowing people to video conference with clients in New York, London, or Tokyo while sheep quietly graze outside their windows. It's an incredible contrast. Ancient Viking traditions, cutting-edge technology, all existing side by side, yet this modern connection brings a new challenge. If the entire world is only a click away, how do you convince the next generation to stay in a village with only a few dozen residents? For the Faroe Islands, that question may be their greatest test yet. Breathtaking landscapes can inspire people, but they can't build an economy. The Faroe Islands understood that long ago create a future for the next generation. These isolated islands had to prove that life here could offer more than stunning scenery. It had to provide opportunity, and that's exactly what they did. Surrounded by some of the richest fishing waters in the North Atlantic, the Faroese transformed an age-old tradition into one of the world's most advanced seafood industries. Every year, the islands export more than $1.2 billion worth of salmon, mackerel, and cod, an astonishing figure for a population of just over 53,000 people. But this isn't the old image of fishermen battling rough seas in wooden boats. Today's industry runs on innovation. Marine biologists monitor fish health with cutting-edge technology. Engineers design offshore aquaculture systems that can withstand powerful Atlantic storms. Researchers develop sustainable farming methods that protect the surrounding ecosystem while supplying seafood to markets across Europe and beyond. The islands are also investing in renewable energy, tidal power, and advanced subsea infrastructure, creating careers that simply didn't exist a generation ago. The result is remarkable. Unemployment remains among the lowest in Europe, and average incomes compete with some of Scandinavia's wealthiest nations. Yet even success comes with a challenge. Many young Faroese still leave. Some head to Copenhagen for university, others chase careers in London, Oslo, or other major cities, eager to experience a bigger world. For a small community, every departure is deeply felt, but something unexpected often happens. Years later, many of those same people come back. They return with new skills, fresh ideas, and a broader perspective. After experiencing fast-paced city life, many realize they miss something they couldn't find anywhere else, a genuine sense of belonging. For them, the Faroe Islands aren't a place they settled for. They are the place they deliberately chose, and perhaps that choice says more about these islands than any statistic ever could. For decades, one question has shaped the future of the Faroe Islands: can a tiny nation survive in a world where opportunity seems to exist somewhere else? Every year, young Faroese leave home to study at universities in Copenhagen, build careers in London, or explore life in larger cities across Europe. For many small island communities, that's usually the beginning of the end, but the Faroe Islands tell a different story. Something keeps calling people back. After years of living in crowded cities, many return in their 30s and 40s, not because they couldn't succeed elsewhere, but because they discovered success doesn't always bring fulfillment. Here, life moves differently. You don't spend hours stuck in traffic. Your commute might include winding mountain roads, ocean views, and sheep grazing beside the highway. Children grow up in neighborhoods where everyone knows each other, and it's not unusual for several generations of the same family to live only minutes apart. That sense of belonging is difficult to measure. But it's incredibly valuable. Of course, island life isn't for everyone. If you crave endless shopping malls, non-stop nightlife, or complete anonymity, the Faroes might feel limiting. In a close-knit community, people know your name, your family, and often your story. Privacy looks very different when your entire village has only a few hundred residents. The weather can also test your patience. Storms can cancel flights without warning. Winter darkness stretches across long months, and the wind becomes a constant companion, yet those who choose this life see these challenges differently. They believe that having fewer distractions creates stronger relationships. That fewer choices often lead to greater appreciation, and that a meaningful life isn't measured by how many places you can go, but by how deeply you're connected to the place you call home. For many Faroese, that's a trade they'll make every single time. So, would you actually live here? It's a simple question, but the answer says a lot about what you value most. That if you're chasing perfect weather, endless entertainment, or the convenience of a major city, the Faroe Islands probably aren't for you. Life here demands patience. Atlantic storms can interrupt travel without warning. Winter days are short, and the isolation is very real, but for the people who call these islands home, those aren't flaws. They're the very reason this place feels so special. At the beginning of this journey, we asked why more than 53,000 people choose to live on a handful of windswept islands in the middle of the North Atlantic. Now we have the answer. The Faroese don't thrive despite the storms, they thrive because of them. When nature is unpredictable, neighbors become family. When resources are limited, communities learn to depend on one another instead of standing alone. The hardships that might push people apart elsewhere have spent generations bringing people closer together. In a world obsessed with convenience, speed, and endless choices, the Faroe Islands offer a completely different perspective. They remind us that a meaningful life isn't built by collecting more. It's built by belonging somewhere. Perhaps that's why so many Faroese who leave eventually return. Not because they ran out of opportunities, but because they discovered something far more valuable than opportunity, a place where they truly belong. These islands may be small, their population may be tiny, but their lesson is enormous. Home isn't always the easiest place to live. Sometimes, it's simply the place that feels the most real, and maybe that's the greatest secret hidden among these volcanic cliffs. Not that people survive here, but that they've discovered a way of living that much of the modern world has quietly forgotten. So, here's one final question. If you had the chance, would you call the Faroe Islands home?